Hey, basketball fans. Dave Hewitt from Fantasy Basketball Analyzer, and I'm getting ready for another DFS show. I gotta be a little quick with this intro because I got a sick kid here at home, and the Disney princesses are only going to keep her busy for so long for me to record this. So we're going handheld with the camera. Ooh, that's new. Uh, and just get ready for the games tonight on Wednesday, January 22nd. Shad and I did our normal podcast recording, so you can listen in our talks, why we picked some people, some tough decisions we had to make. So rather than just naming off, here's 5 players I like, we help kind of try and bring our own little flavor to how you round it out and what it means if you pay up for someone like LeBron. Perhaps someone did. Or if you do kind of more of a less stars and scrubs and more even keeled approach. So Shad and I actually took different approaches this week, and we're playing head to head, and we'll see how that goes. And hopefully we have some helpful tips in there to help you win your matches. So we're using DraftKings for the 22nd, this Wednesday, I said. Sorry. I also wanted to rattle off a couple other names I didn't talk about just as notes. I don't have any further info just yet because it's a little early. But we didn't talk about the fact that Reggie Jackson is supposed to be returning for Detroit sometime this week. If tonight happens to be the night, he's only 3K. So there's a good chance that that could be a real swing if you're checking close to lockup. If you get Reggie Jackson for 3K, that could really matter, or it could mean nothing. But there's a good flyer there if you want. And Chandler Hutchinson for the Bulls is only 3K as well. He's been averaging 16 fantasy points over the last 4 games, give or take. So at 3K, if you get 16 fantasy points for him, he's already 5 times value. There's not much risk there. He's listed as questionable for tonight. But if it works out, you've got a winner. Or at least saving money to afford to pay up for LeBron or Harden, whoever you choose. You could have a potential winner, I should say. So we didn't talk about that. There's a couple bargain guys if you want to go with someone real cheap that we didn't mention in either of our lineups. From that, let's bring in Shad and get to the show. Hey, Shad. How's it going this evening? We're recording on Tuesday evening for the Wednesday games. So, another week, another chance to win money on DraftKings. And welcome back to the show.
Yeah.
So, we were actually just talking and catching up before we started recording the show. And you started telling me about making a strategy change for this week. And I cut you off and said, wait, let's save that for the show. Let's start going. So we're recording. Go ahead. What's your take on the lineup this week?
Yeah, it's good to be back. No, just like we were talking about, like I just started kind of really comparing. You talk about just trying to hit like 300 points, but sometimes to do that, you feel like you have to put in like the top guys, the guys that are like in the 9,000 to 11,000, the James Hardens and stuff like that, and you really don't. Sometimes you can get conservative and get those mid-range guys that are going to consistently get you the 30 to 40 points. And then at that point, really, you're just hoping that an 8,000 player puts up 56 to 60, which is possible. I mean, you look at some of the players that are in the 8,000 range, and we'll talk about a couple of them. They have the potential to get 60 points. It's not just that you have to pay for those upper guys. You have to keep in mind that when a guy's like 11,000 or 11,000, he's gonna have to get you 70 to 80 points to be valuable. I mean, for that price. So at that point, it's just kind of you kind of weigh your odds, and when you're looking at some of the winning lineups, you don't have I've seen lineups that have the top guys and they've been able to hit lucky with a 3,000 guy or a low 4. But I've also seen the lineups here recently where it's just mostly just, not going above 9 and really keeping your lineup between the mid 4 to around 8,000. Because now you get kind of like that you get more guys in the 6,000 to higher 5,000 range. And those guys you can find guys that are hitting the 30 and 40 in those ranges.
Yeah, I know what you mean. So, for example, on Monday on MLK Day, I played the 5 o'clock slate of games, and I played Chris Paul, who only cost 6,500, and he was able to get me 50 fantasy points.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a huge value. I mean, that's what you're hoping the minimum is for when you're paying 10 grand for something, and he was 6,500.
Mm-hmm.
So both him and Westbrook were cheaper than Harden, And Harden had a fine game. Well, he was 1 for 17 for 3, so I guess he didn't have a fine game. But he still put up fantasy points. But Westbrook was cheaper too at 9,800. So he was more expensive, but cheaper than Harden and got you 70 fantasy points. So staying under that 10K, I guess that's still a little bit higher than you were talking about. But I was kicking myself because I actually had Dylan Brooks in the lineup on my original lineup for Monday. And he did really well. I mean, he was 5,800 and got 53 fantasy points. But I ended up pulling him out. I needed to save a little money to pay up for Giannis. And Giannis had a good game, but the value play, points over cost. Dylan Brooks got 5 times value practically. Or sorry, not 5, 10 times value practically, and that's way better than the 11K I shelled out to get Giannis into my lineup based on what ended up happening.
It's kind of the double-edged sword. Like you want to try to find a lineup to get a James Harden in who could potentially go for 61 points and 10 assists and potentially 10 rebounds as well. And that's going to get you almost over 100, but it gets tricky when you're really diving down in the barrels for some of these guys in the below 4. It works like when you're playing a team that's up in pace and they have their starting line out. Then you can get lucky with a 3,000 guy. But in most cases, it's easy. You're betting your odds safer in the higher and DraftKings knows this. That's why they set their guys, at a specific range. That 3,000 guy, there's a reason why he's 3,000. But I think we found the example of a 3,000 guy that was good. You sent me the other, I think today.
That stat I sent you. That Matisse Thybulle is averaging 3.7% steals. So estimate of the percentage of opponent possessions that end with a steal by a player while he was on the floor. The Matisse Thybulle's got 3.7, so that puts him on that list with Rondo, Ginobili, Gary Payton, Clyde Drexler, Muggsy Bogues, real names of real players. And then also Marco Jaric, which was a little bit of a surprise.
Thybulle, yeah. He's had a good game since we found him in the 3. He's been consistent. We just got lucky that the injury of Embiid going down, Thybulle got more minutes. And with those more minutes, when we were first playing him, he was in the 3K and he was getting 22, some odd points.
All right, so you're going kind of more less stars and scrubs lineup based on what you're seeing and how you're building this lineup. I've still went a bit bargain shopping, maybe even riskier than normal. So we'll see, but kind of like we like to do. I could throw out some names here that are who I've got right now that I do need to check back. One of them's even a contract issue, so that'll be a little interesting. But so in our head-to-head matchup, you've got far more, if you're playing middle price range guys, you're playing more of a cash lineup, hoping for that was it GPP upside, but you're not going as risky. So in our head to head, I feel like I'm coming in with the wrong ammo.
Yeah, but you could just crush me with your ammo. Yeah. I'm playing a little bit more conservative where you could just come over the top and put 60 points more than me.
Well, we'll see. You got me last week. You edged me out on that. So
yeah, it felt good. It felt good to pay out. So
cool. All right. So you won last week. Let's start us off now. Who you got as your 1?
So at point guard, I went with Kyle Lowry. Just kind of, he's coming off a disappointing game in terms of fantasy points. He only put up 28 fantasy points against Atlanta. I would expect against Atlanta to be able to put up almost 40 or 50. So he only putting up 28. It's a little disheartening, but he had 43 against Minnesota. So, kind of he's going up against Philadelphia. I think earlier in the season he had 26 actual points with 6 rebounds and 5 assists. If he can kind of get me to kind of the same amount, now you're looking at almost close to 40 points, and he's only 6,600. I'll take that.
Yeah, nice choice. Honestly, I overlooked it. I just saw the Philly matchup and went, oh, they're good defense. I just kind of moved on, and that was wrong. I like that choice.
And correct
I
me if I'm wrong. I'm pretty sure Kyle Lowry is a Philly kid.
I don't know, so I can't correct you. Maybe right now Canada just adopted him, so you know.
Yeah.
Um, all right, I spent my money early, and I played LeBron going against New York. The Lakers just had that bad game against Boston. There's obviously no one you're afraid of in New York. He's going to Madison Square Garden, so it's an away game, but there's been plenty of history of players upping their game at Madison Square Garden for a big thing. And this is all narrative street. Maybe it won't happen, but it's LeBron. Like, you're not normally going to get dud games anyway, but there is just that chance after Boston kicked your ass to go to New York and just have like those crazy playoff eyes on, like just for no reason. One of those middle of the season just beat downs. So he only got 42 fantasy points in the last matchup against Boston, which if you paid 10, that sucks because it's 4 times value. I'll take 4 times value when we're down in the 3 or 4 thousand range where you're just like, okay, just don't hurt me. But if you paid up for 10, that's no good. But obviously other times he's getting 58, 53 fantasy points. So he was priced at 10-8 against Boston, which, is a challenging matchup. Because of the dud game, he stayed priced at 10-8 against New York, which is not a challenging matchup. So I almost felt like that was, even though he's expensive, it felt like a little bit of a value that they didn't adjust his price at all.
It's got to be a comeback game for him because he just had his first loss to Kemba Walker.
That's
he
right.
Is 24-1 against Kemba Walker. So I feel like he's got to put up, at least 81 just to get it back and get that out of his mindset.
He'll just be like, Kemba's from New York, so I'm just going to go kick New York's ass, even though he has no affiliation with this at all. All right, who do you got at your 2?
At the 2, I went with Dillon Brooks. He's kind of had the hot hand with Memphis. So last game, he had 53 fantasy points against New Orleans. 2 games ago, he had 42.5 against Houston. And the game in between, he had 31.5 at 6,200. Kind of going middle of the road. And I think if he continues the hot hand shooting, he can get you another 40 points. And at that price, that's over 6 times value.
Yep, exactly.
Against Boston.
You'd sent me your lineup before we started recording, and I didn't look at it. I also have Dillon Brooks, which I suppose isn't shocking because I talked at the start where yesterday when we're recording this, for Monday, for MLK Day, I had Dillon Brooks in a lineup. I ended up pulling him out to pay up for Giannis, and Dillon went off. So for this one, I was like, nope, I'm making sure I'm getting him. I'm plugging him in at that middle price, like you said. He had one dud game like 4 games ago, right? Against Golden State, where you would really want a good game. He only got 9. But he's had over 20 points in 5 of the last 6 games. So it feels pretty safe, and it has upside at the same time, which is kind of ideal at that price range.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so we both went with Dillon. I'll go next with my small forward. I went with Troy Brown Jr. for Washington, going against Miami. This is a value play at 4,700. So he's coming off a dud game. He only had 12 and a quarter points, and he was priced at 5,200 against Detroit. So they dropped him down to 4,700. Miami's got a good defense. They're playing that 2-3 zone there. But it's just kind of an up and down. I'm hoping that lightning strikes, right? So if I'm reading backwards through his log, 12 fantasy points, 39 fantasy points, 7, 20. So if I can get one of those upside games, like, not that just because there was a pattern, there will be a pattern of every other game, but if I could get 20, like, I'm there at 5 times value and feel pretty safe. And it just doesn't seem that, I don't need him to get 22 points to get me 20 fantasy points, right? 9 points, 6 rebounds, and I'm basically there. That's what he had against Utah, which isn't a very favorable matchup. So I'm just looking for that kind of safe middle of the road. Troy Brown Jr. was cheap enough to fit in my budget. I have a little more money left over from this lineup that I could. I've got like $300 left over, so I could make a move if I needed to, but I'm not too worried about Troy. I'm kind of optimistic there.
I have him in my keeper league, and I picked him up when Bill went down, and he had a great time, And the thing about Troy Brown is he doesn't have to get you 22 points because he's giving you stats across the board. Like he'll get you some steals, he'll get maybe one block, and he's getting a couple threes. So he's getting you some stats, and so that's why I picked him up.
Yep.
In my keeper league.
Who you got at 3?
At the 3, I went with a guy who's kind of let me down in the past, but I feel like they're finally letting him play because they've really gone through a lot of injuries. Michael Porter Jr. You look at what he's done the last couple games, 48.5 points against Minnesota, 24 points against Indiana, 47 points against Golden State, and then 37.5 against Charlotte. Yes, they have been down with injury, and if those guys start to come back, I'm a little worried. But I'm going to play Michael Porter Jr. and hope that they continue just to let this guy go. They haven't really been giving him a ton of chance when the whole lineup is healthy. But I think he's starting to show that, hey, I'm finally recovered from my injuries that I had from college and earlier years, and I can play in this league. He's getting the points. And the thing is, he's also getting you rebounds. Last game, he had 20 points, 14 rebounds, 4 assists, and 1 block. Guy, for 6,600 points, I will take that every game if he could give me that. So the goal is that, Gary Harris and Jamal Murray and Paul Millsap, one of those guys stay out and they give Porter some more run minutes. If they do, then I'll go for that.
Yeah. Yeah, especially against Houston. You feel okay about that matchup too. I like it.
Oh, yeah.
All right, let's keep the ball in your court. Who you got? Oh, I see who you got at the 4. Let's talk about it.
Yeah, so at the 4, it's his first game of the season, and I figured at 5,000, I would ride the Zion train. I don't know how many minutes they're going to play him. I'm hoping it's around, 20-some minutes. That I would like that. I feel like they've held him out long enough really to get his feet underneath. I mean, if you watch him, coming out in pregame and stuff like that, I think you sent me a tape of his dunk in general from just standing and going between his legs. He's an athletic freak. And so I decided to play Williamson. I'm hoping that he can at least get me 30 fantasy points. I feel like he can get some rebounds. I feel like he can score in this league. I just don't know if he'll have the time, but I'm playing a risk that not a lot of people are going to be playing him his first game. They'll wait to see what he's doing. And if, say, for instance, he goes for, 30 fantasy points for me, which is what I would need from him, hey, I'm one of few that took the risk.
Yeah. The only thing I have to maybe throw some water on that is I also played Zion. So either we are in the like minds or we aren't in the minor few. Maybe everyone's doing it. Partially because I think a lot of people are like, well, I guess this game's not national TV, but if you got League Pass, I was finishing out my lineup and went, wait a second, Zion plays Wednesday. I'm absolutely going to watch the game. I should check out his price. At $5,000, yeah, I'm playing Zion. I'm throwing him in there. It'll give me an extra little interest in rooting there. And I think he could get me $5,000. They were talking about him coming off the bench and stuff like that. I kind of feel like it's built up so long that they'll start him just to start him. But yeah, like you said, it may end up only being 20 minutes, but he's so explosive. He could do it in 20 minutes, right? I'm not too worried about the busts, right? I don't think it might not be a boom play, but I don't expect to see a little snowflake on there, on the app when I'm looking at it. All right, so technically I had Zion playing at center, although it's interchangeable. So my power forward was Marquise Chris for Golden State again, and that was where I was saying that I've got a little money left over, and contract-wise I got to check it. Right, so they cut Chris a couple weeks ago to make room and bring Lee up, and then they offered Chris a 2-way contract. So the 2-way contracts, right, there's only so many games you can play. And he has played 3 straight games, all of them. They got the 2-way. He played against Denver, Orlando, and Portland since getting on the 2-way. So I don't know if they're just going to burn through all of his available games right now and then just sit him down and be like, all right, we can't play you the rest of the season. Yeah. So I'm assuming he's playing.
I believe it's 22 games that they can play. But I don't know, like, because he's played games prior, if that goes into it, or is it as soon as you sign that contract?
Okay, thanks. It should just be under the contract. Because
Yeah,
he was on a
because
regular contract that just wasn't guaranteed. So they were able to waive him, which is why they did it. And then they brought him back and he started using up, his available NBA days right off the bat. But I don't,
yeah,
you know what? I don't know how the language is now. I know they changed this. We're way off in the weeds from DFS. But the way the two-way contracts used to be, if you like traveled on an away game Wednesday night for a Thursday game, that counted as one of your NBA days of service, the travel day. So like guys on two-way contracts were like catching regular like morning commuter flights on Thursday, the day of a game, just to save that day of
oh yeah,
eligibility. Now they've changed that language, but so I just don't know if it ends up being like 22 games or how that works now, if it's 22 business days or whatever. Anyway, they just brought him back on the 16th. He's played 3 straight games. As far as I know, he's going to play, right? He's only 3,900. So even a dud game, right, of like 14 points is still pretty safe, right? Because 16 points is 4 times value. And his last game against Portland, and there was overtime involved, but he only played 21 minutes of it. He got 24 fantasy points. If I can get 24 fantasy points, I'm right there. I'm at 6 times value already.
yep,
So if he's playing, I'm not too worried about it, because even, like I said, like a bad game, as long as he's getting me 12, 14 points, he's not going to screw my team at this price, which is one of the
yeah,
upsides of going cheap. But yeah, if he literally just can't even play because of contract, it's something I'm going to have to make sure be like, is Chris in the lineup? And also,
yeah.
it's West Coast, right? So Golden State versus Utah, it's a later thing that I have to check and make sure, because honestly, to that point, I should probably functionally I should move him into my utility spot just in case I have to change, and not have my
Yeah.
power forward locked. So if anyone's doing that, do as I say, not as I do. Don't put him in power forward. Play Chris in your utility.
Yeah.
All right, so that's my center and power forward because I got Zion. So who's your big man in the middle?
So the guy for at center for me is Domantas Sabonis, and I kind of went with the philosophy of he's on, he's off, he's on, he's off. So 6 games ago, he scored 53 fantasy points. Then he went 35. Then he went 58. Then he went 19. Then he went 58. Last game against Utah, he had 21. So I'm expecting a 50-point game. If I'm following the trend, he's kind of said it. So if he can get me a 50-point game at 7,900, that's definitely worth it. They're going up against Phoenix. Ayton does scare me because he's playing the center role, so he'd be going up against potentially Ayton. Potentially not if they're switching him and Turner out between. I feel like Ayton potentially will more likely guard Turner more because Turner's a little bit taller. But, they could still be playing him some at center minutes, which then that kind of hurts his rebounding. He's been doing pretty well at rebounding. The games that he had at least 50 points, he had double-digit rebounds. There was one game where he had the 35 fantasy points. He had 16 rebounds. But in most of the games, he's had a double-double, which obviously, yes, double-double is going to get you a ton of points. So I'm hoping against Phoenix that he does well along with this trend. Just kind of following it. I think Sabonis has the potential to go for 50 points against Phoenix. I don't trust in Phoenix's defense, so.
Yeah. For the record, that 58-point game was was Sabonis's first triple-double of his career. So maybe not shooting for the 58 the only time.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I like the
But
pick.
he did have a couple. He had 50 points in there. So.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, for sure. I was just looking at the notes going.
Because he had the 58.3, and he was 4 assists shy from a triple-double. Because he had 29, 13, and 6. Yeah.
He had a double-double and a half, is what you're saying.
Yeah. Yeah, so rather than the 29 points, he could have at least easily just passed up some of those shots.
Yeah, there you go.
Pump, fake, and dish.
We got DraftKings to win. Come on, Sabonis.
Yes. I need the extra, I think it's like 5 or 3 points for the triple-double or something like that.
Yeah,
I can't remember how much it.
let's check. Has to be scintillating radio as I look at the. It is 3 points. You get 3 points for the triple double.
Yeah.
Although
I need
I
the extra
actually,
3.
I don't know this. Is it? I think it is just 3. I don't think it compounds with the double double, which was 1.5. I think you just get 3 points for the triple. I don't think you get 4.5.
Yeah. I agree. I don't think you do.
Yeah. Although obviously you got all the points for everything that went into getting a triple double, so
Yes.
it pays off. All right, we're looking at our utility slots. Who do you have, edge or guard? Oh my God, our lineups. All right, go ahead. We are simpatico tonight.
Yeah. Well, I mean, great minds think alike, right?
Yeah.
No, I went with So Jaylen Brown is out. Marcus Smart has stepped into the lineup, and if you look at the last game that he had, or 2 games ago, albeit it was against Phoenix, he had 68 fantasy points. And last game he had 21, but 3 games ago he had 40 fantasy points as well. I believe 3 games ago is where he stepped into the lineup. If I'm correct about that, I believe that's true. I can't remember when Brown went out.
It's hard to say because the minutes are actually not that different. Like the rotations changed, but his total minutes aren't that different. He's been playing up around 30 minutes anyway. So at a glance, you can't exactly tell whether it's, Detroit, Milwaukee, where he started. But he plays with a different squad and he gets a better chance for.
And this is going up against Ja Morant and Dylan Brooks' defense. He's bigger than both of them, so I'll take it. So I think he can continue to shoot the ball well against Memphis. I think they're like a middle of the pack in terms of point guard, shooting guard, fantasy points. So,
Yeah, Memphis is a team we like to attack anyway because their pace defense, that aggregate that I use for rating people, Memphis is one of those teams we want to go after. Yeah, I mean, I played Marcus Smart as well. That's why I said we're so simpatico. I like it. The boom game he really had the other day wasn't the Lakers, like I said, it was Phoenix. He had 11 3-pointers. I don't think we're seeing that again. I can't believe he put up 22 3-pointers. He put up 22 3-pointers. That is ridiculous. But then he made half of them, so it's worth it. Making the half of them is not that crazy. Against Milwaukee, he made 5 of 10. But just that opportunity. He also, this is weird. So he shot 22 threes. He shot 0 free throws. He didn't go to the line at all. He got 37 points without taking a free throw. That's so bizarre.
Yeah, when he's just standing behind the line and not driving it, he's not going to get any contact.
I mean, he took 25 shots overall.
Yeah.
But I guess that means he only took 2.
I'm sure the other 3 were.
He only took 2 inside the
field. Yeah, they probably had a foot on the line. That's probably what it was, just a foot on. Who'd you have at your forward spot?
So my forward spot, I don't love. So I'm playing Luke Cornett from the Bulls. The Bulls are just the walking wounded, as we talked about before. They're without Carter, they're without Gafford. So if I can get 20 minutes from Luke Cornett, I think I get my value for 4,700. So he's coming off a bad game against Milwaukee on MLK Day. He only had 10 fantasy points. At $5,000, that would really suck to get 2 times value. And he only played 15 minutes. I think he just got outplayed. There was actually a weird league pass error, and I kept trying to watch this game, and it just kept saying, "Oops, there's a connection issue." When either I tried to load the Bucks or the Bulls game, obviously the same game, but either feed, and I just couldn't watch it. I didn't, and the game wasn't close, so I didn't go back on tape and rewatch the game. But against Cleveland and against Philly, so Cleveland's a cakewalk, but Philly's not. He got 23 and 26 fantasy points because he played, over 20 minutes a game. At 4,700, if I can get 20 fantasy points, that's not great, but I'm okay with it. And I needed to find a value play. Like I said, I've got 300 left over. And assuming Chris is playing, Luke Cornett is probably where I might want to pay up a little bit, because going from 4,700 to $5,000, I feel like would open up a lot of options, especially here in the utility. But I wanted to keep a little room here. So it's inconsistent, but I felt okay with it I got to go back a bit to against Detroit where I got like 33 fantasy points to really feel like I've got upside. So I don't love it. It's there, you know. It is what it is.
Yeah.
I wanted LeBron, and I had to pay down somewhere to get LeBron in my lineup.
Yeah, that's just like we talked about earlier. You know, sometimes you're forced to pay down rather than the luxury of going down.
Yeah.
With those players sometimes. At my forward, I end up going with a guy that I really like, Matisse Thybulle. I still can't say his name right, so Matisse. I went with Matisse. So, just the last 5 games, he's had 2 games that were below 20 points. The only thing I would say is if I was to punt, this would be the position that I would punt right before. The other guy that I would be looking at is DeAndre Hunter for the Hawks. He's had 2 really good games of 32 and 34 points against Toronto and Detroit, and they're going up against Clippers who potentially will not have Paul George. So, just kind of looking at that. If I was to punt, I would punt that way. But I do like what Matisse is doing. He's kind of been given the minutes. The last couple of games, he's had 33, 29, 36 minutes. So he's getting the gameplay. I think if he continues to be included more in the game, it's not like he's not getting the shot. Last game he was unfortunately 1 for 7. The game before that, 2 for 5, and then 2 for 7. So he's given it at least 7 shots. If he hits half of those, at that point, then you're giving me really close to the value that I'm looking for with the 4,600. He's going to get me between 24 and 28, which around that price is kind of like my 5 to 6 times value.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it seems safer than Cornette, who I just said for, I was paying $100 more for.
Cornette was on fire for me last week. He was in my winning lineup, so.
That's true.
But
well,
at the point
Detroit,
that he was.
Right? No, that was too.
Yeah. No, it was against Boston, but he was only. Or no, it was against Washington, and he was only 3,100. So I guess your 4,700 is a little bit different.
Yeah, no, that's part of it.
But yeah, I'm looking at it. I'm really comfortable with Matisse, but if I was to punt, I have like 200 that I can spend, so I can go up one slot with DeAndre Hunter, and he's had pretty good last 2 games as well. So
yeah, cycling back just in case other people are like, yeah, you're an idiot with the Luke Cornette move. I was just looking at what I could pay up for, and I've got 2 tempting options at that 5,000 there for the forward flex specifically. I mean, you could play Thaddeus Young. You could just play the other Bulls forward if you wanted.
Yeah.
But last week I played. Now I get to pronounce the name wrong. Svi Mikulikic from Detroit, that shooting guard that I played.
Yes.
So he's at $5,000 even. He had a down game at 13 fantasy points against Washington, which you really don't want to see against Washington. But that dropped his price $500. So he came down from 5,500 to $5,000. So there's an opportunity there because the games before that, 37 fantasy points against Atlanta, 32 against Boston. You get over 30 at $5,000, you're feeling really good about it, right? You've already got past your 6. So I liked him there. And the only reason I didn't pick this guy for the lineup, in fact, I kind of want to change it in there against my matchup against you, is just because I always say him every week. And Davis Bertans. Davis Bertans is $5,000 right now.
Yeah.
He had a down game against Detroit, and so they dropped his price $600. So I'm pretty confident in Bertans' ability to get at least 25 fantasy points for me at 5 times value. The last time he played Miami, he got 41 fantasy points. So if I can get 41 out of a $5,000 player, then I'm sitting pretty. And the way Miami specifically plays that 2-3 zone, which isn't necessarily all the time, but they are playing that a lot. They have a weakness available open for those corner threes that Bertans specifically is like built to kind of chew them up. Not that he needs a plug for me, but there's, what's the channel? There's a YouTube channel Coach Piper's channel. I'm trying to think of it. Hardwood Hoops, I believe. Hopefully I got that right. But he did a breakdown recently in the last couple of weeks of the zone defense that Miami's been running, and it like blew up. It's got like 111,000 views or something like that in 2000. Like, it's amazing.
Yeah.
But he shows the zone and really breaks it down, and it's like custom built for Bertans to be able to attack that. So coming off a bad game, I've got a little extra money to pay up. I probably should change that right now, but I was just trying to talk to someone else. So sorry, I got ahead of myself to our other runs, but while you were talking, I was going, oh, he's paying cheaper. Who else could I play at my forward besides Cornette? All right, I talked for a bit, so why don't you finish us out? Who's in your last spot in your utility?
So on my utility spot, I went with Bradley Beal. So 7,200. He's Bradley Beal. He's going to be able to score. I'm waiting for him to really get back to at the start of the season where he was averaging 56, 57, 60 points, where he was kind of like $9,000. But he's only 7,200. So at that point, I'm just hoping that, one of these games you got to play them when they're a lot lower. He's going to get back to that 9,000, 8,600 value. And so at this point, for 7,200 against Miami, kind of like you said, they have the ability for the open threes. Mm-hmm. Not only is he a good scorer on that team, but he's also one of the guys who are dishing out assists. So, at that point, if he can be the ball handler as well to kind of help with those assists in the corner, I'll take it. But last game, he had 39 fantasy points against Detroit, 29 points, 6 assists. So that's kind of where I went with my utility. What about you?
Cool. With my utility, you actually helped me out when I was talking about, because when I paid down for Zion, when I switched someone else, I think I changed like Will Barton to Zion. I saved a bunch of money, and I didn't know who to spend with 9,000 left over, and I just didn't love like Zach LaVine and stuff this week. So I went with Devin Booker. So I paid a little bit less at 8,700 with Devin Booker. I'm kind of always comfortable with Devin Booker. Even in a bad matchup, I always think he has the chance to go off. So he's playing Indiana. They've got a solid defense, and they're at the fastest pace of play. But like I said, he's a good player, and he's a really good fantasy player. So he's coming off 52-point games, 69, 41, 55. Technically the 41 at this price, the 41 would actually be a little bit of a disappointment. And that was against New York. So he was actually priced at 9,000 when he did that. But I guess I just don't have much to say about, he's playing 39 minutes a game some nights. So he's going to have the opportunity, and going against Indiana, like it's a scoring move, right? Every now and then he'll get you 10 rebounds, but you don't count on that. You're thinking middle of the road for rebounds and assists. I suppose that the difference is when Rubio's out, but I don't believe Rubio's out. When Rubio's out, then he really gets the ball in his hands, and stuff can happen. All right. I think that's our line.
Yeah,
Anyone else standing out to you? I already kind of rattled off my Bertrand's love, but
yeah, a standout for me, if you're really shooting high, Jokic against Houston. They give up a lot of threes as well, and he's a good guy to stand out there and shoot the three against Houston. Mm-hmm. I think I can't remember. I think he went off the last time he played them, but maybe not. Maybe we were expecting him to go off because I think Bertans or something like that had just recently gone off against them. So yeah, he only put up 34 fantasy points, but kind of expect. I think that he's going to have a good game. And the other guy that we were talking about a little bit before, De'Aaron Fox against Detroit. From point guard, I think Derrick Rose is going to be guarding him. In some of that instance, I'm trying to think who else they play. They play Bobby Brown, I believe, is the other guy who's playing shooting guard, and then he would potentially have Svi against him as well, because I think Svi is their shooting guard as well. So if he gets mismatched in that point, but he's a week away from last week putting up 56, 60, and 56 fantasy points. he has the ability, especially against potentially a slower team, that he can, knife through that defense and really do some damage against Detroit. So that's a guy that I was looking at. And then really just Mr. Consistent, DeMar DeRozan. If you look at he's only 8,200 points. The last 4 games, 49, 51, 45, and 44. That's solid consistency for that's if you're going to pay high, you want to make sure you're paying high for a guy who is giving you that consistent value. The higher guys sometimes are going to, like LeBron, I think how much did you end up paying for him?
10 grand. It wasn't into 11. 10.
8. But
so it was 10.
But like you said, just a
11.
couple games ago. Yeah, so like a couple games ago, he had. No, I don't want LeBron. He had 42. So, at 10-8, I would rather pay 8-2 for that 42 than, it's kind of one of those things where you're paying the risk, and those guys they're going to have risk. Even Harden has a down game. Versus his value.
Hey, twice this month. Harden has shot 1 for 17 from 3. That is insane.
Yeah. So, those are just a couple names out there, especially DeMar DeRozan. I think I talked on him a couple of these sessions where he really has been consistent for San Antonio as of late. So,
yeah. You were talking about. I looked at Fox as well. On the other side of the ball for Detroit, besides I mentioned Svi, but I was also considering Seko Deboya. If I wanted to pay down at 4,600, he's coming off again. A lot of these guys I'm looking at, and at that range, that mid 4,000 range, are coming off of disappointing games. He got 11 fantasy points against Washington. He only got 9 against Atlanta. Those are not ringing endorsements. Like, those are the teams you want to attack. But that's what brought his price down from below 5,000, because the games before that against Boston, he got 31. In New Orleans, he got 32. So he's playing the same minutes. He's playing in the upper 20 minutes. So if he gets that again and against Sacramento, there's the possibility that you're going to get 32 points on a guy who's 4.6. So it's not someone I would want to play in a cash game lineup, but definitely for the general prize pool.
And I think I saw Drummond might be out that game because of a lip laceration or something like that. So he might get a couple extra minutes.
Yeah. He was pouting on the bench too hard and cut his lip.
Yeah. He's just really waiting to be traded.
Yeah. I don't know what's going to happen. I think everyone's afraid of him picking up that option. The team option for next year, like $28 million or whatever. Which, I mean, he might opt out.
You know what, Mark Cuban? Mark Cuban, go after him.
He might opt out and just try and get like a 4-year deal or something like that, which would be fine. But I feel like it's maybe a little bit of the unknown of like, if Atlanta really pulled the deal for him and then he signed and they're like, oh shit, we had $60 million in cap room, and nope, there goes $28 million of it. No, none of that's DFS, but I've been wondering about it because it does affect, like, I haven't wanted to play Drummond in DFS at all, just because I don't want it to be one of those days where it's like, oh, he's traded, and they don't tell us because he's not injured, and then he just doesn't suit up, and you're like, where the hell is Drummond? And you take that 0.
Oh yeah. I would love to see Porzingis, Drummond, and Luka. The Mavs have the salary cap. Come on, Mark. Let's just make it happen.
I feel like you might regret that, honestly. You get all those rebounds, but he's just going to clog the lane. Like, you want Luka diving in there and kicking that ball out. I mean, Drummond's got no shot. Like, he's not getting away from that rim. Right? Like, he's just going to camp out there.
Yeah, but that's what they need. They need that so that Kristaps' knees stop getting hurt so bad down low.
Well, I mean, they paid Powell. They probably overpaid Powell a little bit to just be their big so that Porzingis could try and play power forward. The only other guy I might look at, and I don't know about OKC, Orlando OKC for a game was kind of stay away from me. Like neither of them play fast. They're both good defenses. But Markelle Fultz has really been playing well lately. And at $6,000, I think there's a good chance he gives you a return on that. Now, I don't know that it's going to be like the other night against the Lakers. He got 55 points like 4 games ago. I don't expect that to happen. But I wouldn't have expected that to happen against the Lakers either, right? So yeah. It was cool to see that was in his bag of tricks. But I think 30 to 36 points or whatever, right in that 5 to 6 times value, I feels like it's pretty safe for the way Fultz has been playing because he's been doing it against the Clippers or Charlotte, right? He's doing it against good teams and bad teams, and he's coming right in there lately. And that, it's weird. It's not who I
getting.
Go ahead.
They're finally giving him minutes. I mean, some of it's due to injuries that they've had on the team, but it's good to see that him finally getting the minutes and showing what he can do.
Yeah, and that's one of the things is it's not the injury of like where you're building your DFS lineup and say, oh, this guy had a sprained thumb and he missed 2 games. So you don't realize that when you're playing Fultz or something. It's like, Jonathan Isaac is likely done for the season. He's not for sure done for the season, but they applied to the league to get the injury exception for him being out for the rest of the year. So they were getting prepared for him being out for the season. And then DJ Augustine's out with the knee, and the only thing they listed is like indefinitely. Or the note that's showing right now from RotoWire just says for the foreseeable future. So you're not worried about either of those guys jumping back and changing that minute situation. So he's really getting like to run the team now. And I'm also just happy for the kid, right? It was such a fall from grace for so many years.
You never want to be that number 1 pick that definitely falls like Anthony Bennett.
Yeah, we might see that in this year's coming draft when we don't know, LaMelo, James Wiseman. It's supposed to be shaping up to be an Anthony Bennett type draft class at the top, but we'll see. It's always like a little doom and gloom here before March Madness because 1 or 2 guys are always going to pop during the tournament, and people will be like, "Oh yeah, the Steph Curry guy, we're going to pick him at 7 or whatever, and he's going to change the entire league." So you never know. And then other times there's Anthony Bennett and nothing behind him.
Yeah.
All right, cool.
Oh, Cleveland.
We've yammered on enough. We should let these people go and set their lineups. So good luck to you in every matchup except our head-to-head matchup.
Oh, no, I plan on taking that head-to-head just so I can own it over you next week.
All right. There was about to be a weird slip of the tongue there. We'll let it go at that. Thanks for listening, everyone. Have a good week. See you, Shad.
Thanks.
And that does it for another episode. Thanks so much for clicking and watching our show. If you made it this far, please hit the like button, subscribe so you see more updates. It really helps a small channel like us grow. Good luck out there winning your game and have a good week.